First of all, give us an overview of the work your department carries out within MCAZ Zambia and how far you've gone.
Okay, I think to start with, I would like to mention that, especially for those that are hearing from us first time, Millennium Challenge Account Zambia, this project is basically a U.S. government funded project through the MCC, the U.S. agency. The U.S. government provided funds amounting to about 355 million to GRZ for the MCAZ, which is the Millennium Challenge Account Zambia, to implement the compact on behalf of the government. As ESP, which is Environmental and Social Performance, we are basically I would call ourselves the starters of the project, in the sense that infrastructure activities will not progress until all the ESP issues, resettlement issues are settled. There are a number of things that we do as ESP, and that is, for example, under infrastructures, as most will have heard already, this is basically a project on sanitation, improving sanitation and water supply. And before you do that, preparations of environmental and social impact assessments have to be done, including the resettlement action plans, which are basically the associates of ASIA. And ESP is basically one sector that does ensure that these documents are prepared. These documents are prepared, reviewed by ZEMA, and finally considered for approval. And I would like to report that the two documents for WATSAN, that is water and sanitation, and drainage, have been approved already by ZEMA. And now we're basically preparing to start our constructions.
That's right. We have heard from previous programs about all the infrastructure work to be carried out. Before I ask you how ESP comes in to fit into this program, we had also the Bombay Drain, we had Lusaka Water and Sewage, among the many that featured in the program. I wanted to find out, how does ESP fit into this?
Okay, so there was procurement. You've mentioned of Bombay Drain, for example.
That's right.
This is one big project which has a lot of resettlement issues. You may be aware this passes through the Kamala area, and if you've been to Kamala, you see all those tuntembas, we call them tuntembas in vernacular. Yeah, all those guys will have to be temporarily settled before the construction of this main drain is done. So what ESP does there is basically to ensure the corridor is cleared for infrastructure sector to set in with their contractors and do the construction. Now, the issue of clearing the corridor, that's where a lot of work is involved, and that is to identify all the affected persons, businessmen, and different other aspects, which are basically included in the RAP, the Resettlement Action Plan. These people will have to be resettled. These people will have to be compensated before the actual construction commences. This is why I said ESP plays a critical role in ensuring that the corridor is cleared before infrastructure sector comes in to do the construction.
Right. The issue of other stakeholders here. Can you also give us an overview of who your stakeholders are and how you are engaging all the different stakeholders in this program?
Okay, we have several stakeholders. We have Lusaka Water and Sewage Company. Of course, we're doing this project basically. Once this project is done, let me say this: once this project is completed, to be handed over to Lusaka Water and Sewage Company for water and sanitation. Then for drainage, to be handed over to LCC to maintain those drains. So these are basically our stakeholders. That's LCC and LWSC. The others, of course, include ZEMA, because ZEMA has to give us approvals of those particular projects we undertaken. Then we have communities. We have these communities within the project areas, because these communities will be engaged, and they will have issues regarding these particular projects that will be
implemented. You mentioned it's a 5-year project, which I'm aware of. And once handed over to the Lusaka Water and Sewerage and the other part that you mentioned, how do you look at the sustainability before we look at the other group stakeholders?
Yeah, that's a good question. Under various components that Millennium Challenge account is undertaking, we have what we call innovation grants. That is something somebody is going to come through to discuss innovation grants, and this is basically to kind of spread some serious sensitization program activities to the communities out there, especially those in the vicinity of the drainages, to ensure that the solid waste management is kind of enhanced, so that our drains, once constructed, do not get choked with those solids. Then there's also what we're calling the stakeholder engagement plan, which should be posted on our website. This is basically a strategy to engage various communities in different areas of this particular city.
When we are undertaking such a project of this magnitude, you involve the communities. Let's look specifically at one group of stakeholders. How have you been mobilizing the communities so that you work well with them? For instance, I think some will be moved from where they are.
Okay. With regard to communities, maybe I start with the fact that we've got a policy in place, the Environmental Social Community Engagement Policy, which is in place, and this is under what we call the Environmental Social Management System, which we put in place as ESP. So this policy now, since it's in place, we have various activities under this policy: the grievance mechanism, the stakeholder engagement plan, which I just mentioned, the emergency response plan. Now, with regard to engaging the community, there is a strategy under stakeholder engagement plan that we're going to implement to ensure that the community is engaged throughout the construction period. If there be any aggrieved persons that will be aggrieved during this particular project implementation stage, there is what we call a grievance mechanism, which I already mentioned, which will basically be kind of implemented or used to ensure that these grievances are passed on to MCAZ. If you recall, a number of guys have talked about contractors coming on board. Absolutely. These contractors reporting to FIDIC engineer reporting to MCAZ. So in that manner, this grievance mechanism, basically will apply to those particular channels. Where a grievance, for example, cannot be addressed by a contractor, it will pass on to the FIDIC engineer. And if the FIDIC engineer feels that he cannot handle it alone, then he passes on to MCAZ to handle it together. Then we pass on the response to the affected community. So these communities will be engaged throughout the construction period.
You just mentioned the contractors just a while ago. What about the question of them contractors? How will you ensure that they consider local residents, for example, for employment opportunities and not export labor from elsewhere?
Yeah, interesting question, and I know that SGA will be smiling to hear this one. Yes, there is a program under ESP, which is actually crafted in the Environmental and Social Management Plan. What it is, when a contractor comes on board, he has to now develop what we call a contractor's site-specific environmental social management plan. In this particular document, we have emphasized, especially through the HIV and AIDS program, that this particular contractor employs local personnel where possible, where practical, and to the extent possible. Employs the local personnel from within the vicinity of this particular project. And where he is unable, that we'll try and see how best that can be handled. But at least there is that emphasis, and that is environmental social management plan for him to employ local personnel.
Right. But we talked about sustainability earlier, and I was just wondering, how does ESP ensure that there is community ownership? Because the community should feel part and parcel over this project.
Yes, like I mentioned earlier, the stakeholder engagement plan will ensure that these communities are engaged all the way through to the end of the compact, and even beyond.
How are you engaging?
There is what we call a community. We have various sectors at MCAZ. We have community outreach, for example, program which is being undertaken by community in conjunction with ESP to get hold of, or basically to go out there and discuss with these communities through the RDCs in those particular communities, and there is a scheduled program under that to ensure that there is some consistency in terms of how we engage these particular communities. Yeah. So they will not be left alone. They will definitely engage them throughout this particular project.
Right. It's 5 year program for you as a Millennium Challenge account. And then what type of engagement are you talking about here?
Well, it will be through radio programs. There will be issues of probably doing some sensitization using these other gadgets, like maybe public speakers, for example, going around those communities, and also through pamphlets and other feasible media that we can use. Communication is done in local language to ensure that even those who may not understand this particular language will be able to pick what we're trying to talk about. So the contractor is going to have a personnel that will be well versed in these outreach community communication issues. Same applies to the FIDIC engineer. We'll have somebody who's very well versed with the community and outreach issues. ESP will basically be MCZ will basically be playing a role of a supervisor, for example, monitoring to ensure that the contractor does abide by what is embedded in the CSMP, the contractor's environmental social management plan.
Right. Mr. Chilungo, tell us about how you will collaborate with communities under the drainage aspects. You've talked about the engagement, yes, but then the drainage aspect, which we heard earlier, covers a good portion of the circle. What messages do you have for these communities?
Yes, for the drainage, it's kind of interesting, and I think even the community out there, and I think the public at large, would attest to the fact that we've had challenges with maintaining the drains in Zambia.
The drains will just for 10 minutes, then the whole central business district.
Indeed,
affected.
Is affected.
Some parts of the communities around Lusaka.
Yeah, and you have floods all over. And this one, there is what we call institutional strengthening activities. I think it's been discussed before on this program, which is composed of basically 3 sub-activities. I've mentioned the innovation grants already, and there's support to LCC and support to LWSC. Now, with regard to drainage maintenance, solid waste management, this touches the support to LCC. We are currently working on the terms of reference for a consultant who will be engaged to kind of capacity build LCC in solid waste management, as well as to engage the community in the vicinity of these particular drains in ensuring that they are sensitized with regard to solid waste management, and also to ensure that LCC does carry that, because the idea is to sustain this particular activity, to ensure that community is engaged. They know exactly how to ensure the solid waste doesn't end up in the drains. This is basically to provide the service that they need. If they throw waste in the drains, those drains get clogged, they have floods, and they get affected because they are nearest to those particular drains. So this consultant will undertake a very serious campaign with the LCC team to ensure that this particular aspect is kind of instilled in these our people.
No, the communities that are involved in the circle, how are they responding to your messages?
With regard to solid waste management?
The issue of drainages.
I see. How are they responding?
Yes.
They would want the drains cleaned up. They would want the the waters to flow, the storm water, if you as you put it. But I think it's the issue of how this solid waste that they generate will be managed. Because half the times they'll complain that they don't have any other place where to dispose of the solid waste generated in their homes and various activities. So they have a concern also, and this is why we would like to engage this consultant to work with LCC and see how best this particular issue, the solid waste generated in these communities, can be taken care of, and not to see it ending up in these drains.
So let's now consider the issue of safety for community members, especially children. How are you tackling this, considering that heavy duty equipment will be brought right into the community?
Yes. Again, I would go back to the contractor. I mentioned earlier about the ESMP, the Environmental and Social Management Plan, and the fact that the contractor will prepare what we call the site-specific contractors social management plan. Under this, there is what we call traffic management plan, which this guy has to prepare. We've also highlighted the same in the technical specifications, which we've given to whoever is bidding for this particular project, construction project, to ensure that safety, various safety measures are put in place. These include safety signs, for example, and also to engage the community with regard to safety. The children, we are aware that children sometimes get excited when there are these big traffic machineries moving around the vicinity there. So the contractor is very much aware through these particular documents, and we've made serious specifications on what to do with regard to traffic management. So we don't envisage any problem during this implementation of this project from the contractor side. We expect the contractor to abide by what is contained in the TMP.
But I was also thinking, one thing is you going to the communities to talk to them. The other thing is for them to respond to probably what they would feel is not of a big, concern to them. Do you have strategies in place that will enable the community to voice, their voice to be heard while construction is going on? Do you have that window to allow them to get to talk to you?
Yes, there is a strategy in place. Like I mentioned earlier, there is what we call a stakeholder engagement plan, and also the grievance mechanism aspect, which is like I said, is going to be posted on our website soon. What it is like I said, when there's a grievance, when the communities want to be heard by MCAZ, there is a channel that they're going to use.
Yes, but what channel is that? Because you talked about there's websites and that kind of communication. Maybe people in some selected parts, like maybe in Tendere, may not have a way to get to you through the website.
Okay, those who may not have a way to get to us through the website. Well, there will be contractors that will be working in those areas, in the vicinity of those areas, where they stay, for example. If they notice any problem, for example, there could be issues like the contractor getting off the corridor. They already cleared corridor for him, and this particular person wants to complain. Through the stakeholder engagement that we are currently undertaking, the outreach communications that we are currently undertaking, we communicating those issues to say those that may want, they can actually, in fact, a number of community personnel now, they have our numbers, and most of them do come to our offices to ask about one or two things. So we expect even during construction, if they want to come straight to MCAZ, they would call MCAZ straight or even come to our offices. But others, we know that they would rather complain or would want to complain to the contractor straight, who we expect should be able to respond to that complaint. But of course, if something that is a bit sensitive, like maybe getting off the corridor, destroying some structure, for example, those will go on to complain straight to MCAZ because they know MCAZ will take care of that particular aspect.
Finally, Titus, how does ESP collaborate with the two implementing entities, the Lusaka Water and Storage Company and the Lusaka City Council?
Yeah, under ESP, we, like I mentioned, we talked about the institution strengthening area. We are currently working on the terms of reference to capacity build Lusaka City Council, especially in the area of solid waste management, and this is how we're collaborating with them to ensure that our drains are cleaned up before the construction starts. Then also with LWSC, there is a role that we're playing there, and that is to kind of instill some sense of responsibility in terms of environmental management and asset management program, and that is basically to look at effluent quality monitoring. As you may be aware, Lusaka Water and Sewage Company, they do have ponds where treatment of sewer from various homes is treated, and then the overflows, discharged into the surface water bodies, the nearby surface water bodies. So what we want to ensure is that these particular overflows are of good quality, they meet ZEMA standards, so that Lusaka Water Sewage Company does not get into trouble in terms of non-compliances.
Lastly, where are we as environment and social performance specialists? What would you like to say as we conclude the program today?
Yeah, I think it's to the community out there. I know people have waited for quite some time now. They've been wanting to see this program kickstart. I think we're coming. I want to assure the community out there, the Lusaka residents, we are coming. Very soon you start seeing some activities, construction activities, especially the drains and the area of Intendere and Kaunda Square. We would like to just encourage our friends out there to be patient, and those that were informed about constructions not to be done in a particular area, for example in a corridor, because I know that and even them, I'm sure they are aware about the corridor that would want to use for such constructions, would want to have that corridor cleared, and those that are affected have been listed already. They'll be compensated for that particular, because they are affected as usual. And we want to implore to those that please, if you can be patient enough not to make any alterations to those structures that are affected, or even to build new structures in the corridor. Let's work together and implement this project together, because it will basically benefit all of us.
Titus, thank you very much for coming through to the program this morning.